All right. Hey, good afternoon. This is Cam Corder, and I'm here with three great friends, Gary Luckridge, Rosemary Cease, David Osmore, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Rose.
Hi, I'm Rosemary. I am here in North Carolina for the YMCAs of Northwest North Carolina, Vice President of Operations, and I oversee 4 branches right now. Been with the Y about 20 years.
Good. Gary?
Hi, Gary Luckridge. I'm the CEO of the Upper PD YMCA. We serve Darlington, Chesterfield, about 4 different counties. And I have been with the Y for 28 years.
Gosh.
Hey everybody, David Osmore. I am the Kentucky, West Virginia Regional Alliance of YMCA's Executive Director. Spit that out, right?
Wow.
Been with the Y 27 years, and I work with 24 great associations across Kentucky and West Virginia.
Man, that's great. The 4 of us, I really was blessed in my career. The 4 of us got to work together, and I haven't thought hard, but I mean, we were probably almost together a decade, somewhere between 8 to 10 years. The 4 of us were together. As I've reflected back on my career, these were some of the best days and the best years, but there was, and I've talked with the 3 of you about this some, there were a couple years during that period where the culture was just really good. But I thought we were clicking on about all cylinders, and not that we didn't have flaws and we didn't have struggles and challenges, but I just thought we were humping it. And I haven't been able to replicate that to that full extent. And so I want to throw that out there. For anybody, just jump in. Why do you think the culture was so good during that period?
I'll start with faith and values. I think we all began with the same foundation, and we knew how how we made decisions. It was consistent that we loved the mission of the YMCA. We loved ministry. We just knew how each other thought and how we think. And I think we grabbed our families and we made this a lifestyle. It's not, Rosemary and I talk about this all the time. It's not an occupation. It's a vocation, and includes our spouses and our children. Heck, I met my wife at the Y, so I love Cleveland County because of that, just in and of itself.
Absolutely. I concur. The same, it's the values, but also we were empowered to develop professionally. And so I think that that growth as a team from the core, just starting at the old Yellow Y, we say that, and then we expanded out and we all grew together and then individually in our profession. I think that made a big difference too. It empowered all of us and it built a cohesiveness.
Yeah, you that's right. And as you say that, I can remember you walking in that first day to apply for a part-time position. So you started as a part-time Group X instructor with us in the early days of our Y. Yeah, that's great. What about you, Gary?
Well, I was thinking about the first time you and I met. Do you remember that?
I remember when we interviewed the process. Yeah.
Yeah, it was about that time. I guess that was in I was trying to think, 98, 97, maybe.
Or before, yeah.
And so
Yeah,
we
right.
talked at length about trust. And I remember that conversation and I think for all of us, we trusted you and you trusted us, and it was okay to make mistakes. And I think we were hungry, we were young, and we made some mistakes, but that's okay. We learned from them. But we also knew that you had our back and we had yours. And so when you have that safety net to say, you know what, we're going to try something a little different and do something different for our communities, and take some risk, I think that meant a lot to us and our families too. So besides what everybody else said, which I totally agree, values and families, I think there was a big trust with our group as well.
Yeah, and in the textbook, Lencioni, trust is number 1. That's what you got to have. Years later, and actually it was just a couple years ago, Shane Robinson now, Shane Collins and I were talking, and I don't know, and she said, yeah, a couple times I would go, Cam's crazy. Why do we have to do that? And David would go, well, Cam's asked us to do it, and we're just going to do it because he's asked us to do it. And and that was just part of that trust thing that and I share with my staff that I probably followed y'all's lead 60 or 70% of the time. That y'all, not that you would flip me, but we would debate an issue and I would go with what y'all said. But that 30 to 40% of the time that I said, hey, I'm playing the boss card, y'all executed. And just like Shane said, you walked out of the office and it was our group, it was our decision. And that created, I think, a lot of trust on my part, at least. But I knew y'all were executing and not second guessing me or whatever.
I think it is important. I think it is important for us to be able to have combative moments. That's part of a great team, is the ability to look at each other and say you're crazy, and the ability to say, well, why am I crazy? I remember very specifically, Gary and I walked into your office with a budget one year, and you looked back at us and said, I'm not taking this to the board. And when we left that, your decision was final. We were not taking that to the board until Gary and I fixed it. And we respected that. And I think that was important for us to, you asked us for ideas, we brought them to you, and you vetoed us. And we were cool with that. We didn't like you at the time, but we got over it quickly and we respected that.
I think my screenshot, y'all can't see it, but my screensaver now says, if you want to be liked, sell ice cream. If you want to be a leader, you don't expect to be liked all the time. So.
Great.
One of the things that I think, looking back at our success is, and Rosemary, I guess, is one example of this, but we had so many other employees that were with us a decade, and they kind of grew from part-time up. I think of Courtney, Missy Hamrick, they started in that part-time ranks, and over a decade, they grew into full-time positions. We had so many like that. I mean, I just mentioned those two off the Eric Smith, you're a little bit probably on the tail end of some of that era, but we had a really strong part-time network, and so many of those still work for us today too, but we had a real strong part-time network.
Yeah, we did. And I think a lot of what we did is we wanted to make sure people understood what the why was about. And like Oz said before, family and values, we wanted to make sure our part-time staff understood that when we hired them. And I give a great example, whether it's Corby Hainline or, Shannon Hovis, those individuals started part-time and then we moved them up to full-time. Those individuals, they believed the same thing we did. So there was a shared values in what we believed in, especially family was important.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, now you're bringing up a lot of great names. And David, I think back to, you talked about faith. Daniel Woodard, Aaron Grooms. I mean, we had this, Rosemary and Mike, this long list of really strong faith leaders at all levels of the organization. It wasn't just a top-down, mission push. It came from all levels. And we lose David.
I'll save it again.
The technology in Kings Mountain,
still,
they're probably better. They got the power plants over there. They're probably a little better.
So
Rosemary, go ahead.
I was just going to say the part-time staff. I know that me starting part-time, being recognized, it wasn't just that I was just a part-time person. The recognition that was granted through, all staff celebrations, the volunteers of the year. I mean, we were recognized part-time just as well as full-time. It didn't run the gamut. Certainly, it was kind of you earned it, but there was still that recognition for part-time, which I don't know if that's is. David is kind of spinning in a circle.
I'm back.
But I think that was very important, as well as when you're looking at the buy-in and the sense of belonging for part-time staff. That was critical for me.
I think also, Cam, we all see a lot of leadership articles, and we talk about empathy, about those soft skills sometimes, that we care about our staff. And I think that's what we saw from you. And then we wanted to make sure that we did the same to our part-time or full-time staff, that we showed that we care.
Yeah.
If you show that you care, then they'll run through walls for you and they'll do so much for you. So it's hard to find soft skills like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that about y'all. I felt y'all cared for me. You know, there are a couple of defining moments in my career where I felt that up so much, but we have this goal right now. This is embarrassing to say almost, that we want to be the Chick-fil-A of the YMCA. And so I've got this young group of leaders, and we benchmarked Chick-fil-A and just did a visit. And, you know, they're saying, I want my department to be the Chick-fil-A of the YMCA. And how does that look? But when we visited Simpsonville and Malden Chick-fil-A, met with that owner there, his quote that he said that we all caught was, cared for people, care for people. And that's been our mantra for the last 6 weeks. And actually navigating through this stuff that I'm going through today, I have to say that to myself daily. Cared for people, care for people. And, you know, I felt y'all did that for me so much during that period.
Is this the
y'all
part of the
had multiple positions since you've left, and have you been able to replicate somewhat close, and maybe what were some of the traits, if you did, what were some of the traits of a good culture for your teams?
David, did you want to say something?
Well, I think this is a good question for Rosemary to answer, because when I went to New Orleans in 2008, I was able, after spending a decade in Cleveland County, one of the first people that I called when an opportunity arose was Rosemary. And because I knew that I wanted the culture that we had created in Cleveland County. And it was a culture of trust, and it was a culture of being open and honest with one another. And I wanted someone in a premier branch that I knew could embody that. And in fact, when Rosemary first got to New Orleans, her branch was not ready, but we had a really difficult situation at the second largest branch. And I put Rosemary in that role, and she calmed the waters, and it was really cool. Rose, you just got this innate ability to bring people together, and it was really cool to watch. And then, you know, maybe you can answer, in 2 years, did we have that culture in New Orleans?
Definitely. I feel I learned that, though, through our culture in Cleveland County. I think being present is very important. Being genuine. I think it's the trust that Gary spoke to. It's the relational. It's really, you know, and I'll never forget this. I mean, you know, Andy Calhoun in Charlotte, you know, he would talk to you, and you were the only person in the room. And you know, I left and went to New Orleans, and years later we connected again, and I can't remember where. And he asked about, and he knew the names of my 2 children. And it's that kind of thing. And that's what I gained in I call them my rookie years in Cleveland County.
What about you, Gary? When you were at your best in Somerville, what were some of the keys there?
You know, I think sometimes we learn from our mistakes more than our successes. You know, when I first got there, and I was there for almost 12 years, you kind of say, all right, I'm the leader now. Everybody needs to listen to me. And you realize real quickly that's, all right, that I need to take a step back. And you realize that, okay, I am only going to be as good as the people I surround myself with. And it does take time to replicate some of the things we had in Cleveland County. And so there were some people who didn't stay with us, and that's okay. Then there were some who did. And then you start putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And you just, it takes time for people to build that. We actually read a book recently, and I highly recommend it. It's called Radical Candor. I don't know if any of y'all have read it.
Yeah.
And so in that book, it talks about if you want to move an organization, you need to have radical candor. And what that means is really compassionate candor. You need to show people you're compassionate and that you do have empathy for them, but also show them that because I do have compassion for you, I'm going to be very honest with you. But if you don't have compassion and empathy for them, then the candor you give them just falls on deaf ears. And that takes time. And so we went through a session with our group here in Upper PDY, and it was just kind of eye-opening. And so those things, if you're going to come in as a leader and think, well, I'm going to change it within 6 months, I think you realize real quickly that sometimes that's not going to happen. It takes time for people to believe in your vision.
Yeah, that's a great book. I've heard that lady's got what's the author's name?
Kim Scott, she worked
Yeah,
with.
she's got a couple great YouTube and TED Talk videos that she's on point. Good presenter.
Cam, you know, the good to great conversation that we had for 3-4 years.
Yeah,
probably encapsulated that period in which you talk about great culture. It is trust. It is aligning your resources and your talents to the skills of your team and letting them do the work that they need to do, but holding them strictly accountable to the values of the organization. That was perfect for our YMCA at that time.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when you said that, when we were at our best is when that book was kind of our driving force, a lot of discussion where we were at. And then on a personal side of me wanting to be that level 5 leader and where was I falling short and challenging myself on a regular basis to be a better leader. You know, that book, it's I think, and it still resonates today. As you said, I need to bring it back. We need to bring it back and take this crowd through it that we're doing. We are, as a movement, just to finish up our talk, you know, we're just going through life-changing times, just stuff that you just never planned for and hoped for. But what makes you feel encouraged about the future of the Y? And again, the focus of these chats, dialogues are to encourage our Y community and family. But how would you encourage the Y world? And each of you need to answer a little bit.
I looked to our history. We've overcome so much in 170 odd years as a movement. And every time there's a challenge in our society, the YMCA comes out on the other side and we evolve and we serve. I look back at my career and I think, why was I put in different places? Because every time I go somewhere, there's a crisis. But I think God prepared me. He's prepared all of us for this in leadership. But eventually it will come down to just the stubbornness of our organization to survive, the flexibility of our organization to survive. But there is a place in this world for the YMCA.
Yeah.
So I'm very encouraged. I'm very encouraged with the 1Y concept, and I'm seeing that just gain legs and run. We have the prime opportunity right now to be, and always have been, a neutral place for all to come and be safe and positive and happy, and for all of us to connect nationally. I've seen a lot of progress that way, so that gives me hope as well.
That's great. Gary?
You know, I go back to my mom a little bit, who's no longer with us. You know, whenever things got desperate for me or our family when I was growing up, she would always be a bright spot for us. And she would always tell us, keep the faith. Things will get better. And whenever we got off the phone, whenever I talked to her, she would always say that as well. And so I think for us as an organization, keep the faith. There's light at the end of this tunnel. It's hard right now. I got it. We're all shuttered in with our spouse, with our kids, like, oh my gosh, when is this going to end? But we're going to be better on the other side of this.
I agree.
We just got to keep the faith that God's in control and we will be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Well, y'all encourage me. I'm encouraged about the movement because of the work that you three and that getting to meet the leaders on your teams in the past and the people that y'all have grown. And I hope that family tree ties back to Cleveland County some way or another. You know, we could have added to this call, you know, Gina McWhirter works for the Hickory Y, and Matt Alton was part-time for us, and now he's the CEO in Hickory. Paxton works for him and was working for us part-time during that period. And so we had a lot of talent. And even outside the Y, I mean, people that left the Y are still they're stars in our community and other places that I felt that we had a hand in their leadership. One exercise that I did and y'all participated is to remember those people and to understand the power of influence when you have people. I've got everybody's family picture on my door that I see of people that don't work for me anymore. But just as that reminder is that it's more than just 9 to 5 that I'm responsible for them or accountable to them. And that it's more than just when they're working for me that I'm accountable to them. It's a lifetime commitment.
You know, Cam, there's something in my daily routine that is due to you. I don't do it as well as you do. I try every day, but I will write personal notes more in this stage of my career than I've ever written. And and when I sit at my desk and write that note, I say to myself, I'm doing this because Cam taught me how to do this. So we appreciate the little touches that you add. These conversations, your retreat every year, it's the softer skills that you excel in. Prayer breakfast speakers. I've never seen anybody that can get Tony Campola and Dan Cathy, and you're a Pied Piper of bringing people together. We appreciate that.
Well, y'all are all part of all those glory days that we had a lot of fun. And for everybody listening, we could spend a couple hours just telling stories on each other about staff retreats and
Oh my gosh.
hiding Gary's trash can and
Oh my gosh.
I'm a little
politics. And, but what I will tell everybody, and it was kind of the theme of this as we wrap up, is that my favorite all-time meeting is we had a debate on Good Old Boys Network. But at the end of the meeting, everybody hugged it out. And that was just what was awesome for me, is that as contentious as that meeting was for about an hour, poor old Daniel Woodard was plastered against the wall, scared to speak. But at the end, Lisa Yerrick and Annette and David and all of us, we just hugged it out. I mean, and it was just that we had the ability to debate and challenge each other, but we knew at the end, we walked out the door, we were family. And that's what counted and worked most. Annette's back working for us part-time too.
Wow. That was the Valley Cruises Conference Center, right?
Yeah, we still go. We're back. We tried to do other things, but we're back to Valley Cruises every year, and we love it. I hope we're back and financially able to go this Labor Day or around September this year.
I hear Gary Luckridge does a mean little teapot version.
Oh yeah.
So,
My attorneys are
Do it
still,
as a cheer. Do it as a cheer too, Gary. You can.
that's right. My attorneys are still trying to find you, Cam. I believe you're doing some copyright infringement.
now, one of the traditions of our wives, when we get new staff, we make them sing "I'm a Little Teapot," and we still do that today. And it is so silly, and I don't even know how it came about, but there was something Gary started that every time we do our quarterly meetings, we'll have one or two at the front of the room that we make sing "I'm a Little Teapot," and it's quite the event,
And Gary always said, "Here is my handle. Here is my spout."
Gary did it wrong each time. Well, that's his Gamecock, growing
Gotta
up.
have fun. I think that's
Backwards.
let's have fun when you're around family and the wise of family. So let's have fun. We're going to do it. So,
Yeah. Well, as I shared with my staff, and I'm going to close on this, and I appreciate and I love you each, but we were talking about how we communicate and what do we want to communicate during this time. And I said, listen, our core value is having fun. So let's make sure what we're doing, that we're encouraging and having fun, because that's one of our most important core values in all that we do. But I'm thankful for each of you guys and just our relationship as family and your families being still part of our family. And thanks for all you've done for the Y movement and then also Cleveland County Y.
hey, thank you.
Thank
Cam.
you.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.